Kia ora. Welcome to our Back to School Whakawhiti Kōrero PBS. I'm delighted that you have come along to join us on this call today. My name is Janelle Atlas, and I am one of the Pause, Breathe, Smile mindfulness facilitators, and I'm based in Christchurch. Thank you for joining us here today at the start of Term 1, 2022, to hear from a teacher who is quite experienced in delivering Pause, Breathe, Smile with her learners. But before I introduce our guest, I want to extend huge gratitude to Southern Cross for their generous financial support of this program, which makes it available completely free of charge to every primary and intermediate school throughout Aotearoa. In these uncertain times that we're all facing, attending to our own and our learners' well-being is even more important than it's ever been. And cutting-edge research continues to show that practicing mindfulness has many, many benefits, including supporting emotion regulation, attention regulation, managing anxiety and stress, and finding ways that we can be in this present moment. So to that end, I'd like to invite you all to just take a moment now, all of us together here on this call, to collect our attention. Okay, we've probably had busy days. We've been rushing around. We finally made it to another Zoom call. And what I'd like you to do is just to find a comfortable upright posture in your seat, wherever you are, whatever is happening in the room around you. And let's just allow our eyes to drift close or soften our gaze. Maybe our hands are on our lap, feet on the floor. And can we show up for ourselves right now? And the way that we can do that is we can tune into our breath. So we're always breathing. It happens without thinking about it. So now we're going to bring our attention to our breath. Just noticing each in-breath and each out-breath. Can we be kind to ourselves if our attention wanders? We can label that thinking wandering. And just come back to noticing our breathing. Our belly rising with the in-breath and falling with the out-breath. Maybe we can feel how the chair or the seat that we're on is supporting us. It's holding us up. We can trust it. And we can just come here, leaving behind all the things that have happened before or what needs to happen next to be here together in this present moment. Let's take a couple more breaths together. And maybe you can find a gentle movement to welcome yourself back as you open your eyes. Maybe some gentle movement in your seat, your hands or your fingers, your head, a little bit of a roll. And before I continue on, maybe I would just invite you to find a word that describes how you feel after doing that very brief practice. Check in with yourself. Where is your well-being? What's coming up for you? And hold that word for yourself. Whatever it is okay. So welcome. Here is how this call today is going to work. First, I'm going to have a kōrero with Sara Gaertner, who's today's guest. And during the dialogue with Sara, I would encourage you to keep your Zoom settings on presenter or speaker mode, not gallery, and that way it keeps it easier to just not get distracted. We have a lot of people on this call, which is super exciting. And so we have participant microphones and cameras set to off, and we'd encourage you to leave those settings that way. This call is being recorded for others who aren't able to make it, but I would encourage you throughout the call at any point, you are welcome to drop comments, questions, or things that you would like the speaker to address in the chat box. So you can find the chat box at the bottom of the screen. There's the little speech bubble. At any point, just drop a message in there. If you hear something or it jogs a memory or you have a question, feel free to drop it in and we'll do our best to reply. Last, it is my promise to you that we will honor your time and we will keep this call to 45 minutes or less. So we will be off by 4:15. If there are questions that remain that we weren't able to get to, we will pop those into the Facebook educators page and give some answers. So again, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Sara Gaertner, a teacher at Kaiti School in Gisborne. And I'm so delighted to welcome Sara here today to share her experiences and insights into successfully teaching mindfulness in her classroom. So welcome, Sara, and thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me, Janelle, and kia ora everyone who is here. Thank you for your time. Really grateful.
So Sara, can you tell us a little bit about your particular school context, your community at Kaiti School, and tell us how long you've been teaching Pause, Breathe, Smile?
Okay, so I've been teaching Pause, Breathe, Smile here at our kura for 4 years now. I'm at Kaiti Kura, and so Kaiti is in Gisborne. We are a Decile 1 school, predominantly Māori and Pacifica. We have a growing role, so that's always exciting and lovely. And with our whānau and a community that we have here, there is big focus on tikanga, Māori and Pacifica tikanga, whakapapa, creating that strong connection to self with others, our tipona, our whānau, our community and our environment, and just who we are within those spaces.
Yeah, so you teach year 5 and 6, is that right?
Yes.
And how particularly do you think mindfulness and attention to well-being particularly is important for primary school children, but maybe especially for your age group? How do you see that as being so important?
So for me, I've been teaching Pause, Breathe, Smile since having year 5, 6. And it was after a year of having taught year 5, 6 that I saw that strong need of developing a deeper sense of self within our emotions and our choices and our responses and reactions. And just knowing that there's a greater range of these feelings and experiences beyond happy, mad, and sad, and that it's really important for us to be able to express those healthily and not feel whakamā around anything that we're feeling, and just reflecting on those feelings and emotions too, and being given the opportunity to develop a strong kete of resources to help us deal with those and understand and accept those and develop compassion towards others and self. And and so it's year 5, 6 that and seeing that sort of shift in age and that step up in maturity within primary school that I saw it really was needing to be taught, especially going into intermediate very soon after.
Yeah, definitely. So what are some things that you've done within everyone on this call is familiar with the program, so we don't need to kind of do the nuts and bolts, but what are some things you've done with the program to personalize it or to make it better suited to your particular students, the students who are in your kura? What are some things that you've done to personalize it?
So everyone here has explored Pause, Breathe, Smile in their own way, and all the people that are on this call too, I'm sure, have made it their own and it works for them. And so I can only speak from my experience and how it works for me and the tamariki that I've had. And so one thing I find that definitely works for my children, particularly if they're tired or they have a lower capacity to be still and present, I find the school journal handouts are really helpful sometimes just for that workshop. So to go through that, and if that's going to be the workshop for that week and we can explore it later, that's been a go-to for me.
So when you say the journal, do you mean the learning journal? You use that?
I mean the learning journal, yes, right. That's available on the website.
Can you say more about how you use that? Do you have them do it in class? Do they take it home? Like, what are the ways you use it?
So we do it twofold. Usually the learning journal is something that I would sometimes use as a home learning follow-up because of the importance and the value I've found in having the whānau involved and the children being able to kōrero with their whānau, what they've learned in the workshop, and yeah, the value that's really come from that. However, some weeks, as we all know, with our timetables and teaching and sometimes the capacity our children have, the idea of sitting down for a workshop with these children in the space that they're in, but still knowing the importance of continuing with those workshops and that strong understanding of self, I just give them that learning journal for whatever workshop it happens to be. I give them that learning journal activity to work through at their spaces in class. And I just talk through it based on what I know from Pause, Breathe, Smile, and trying to just deepen it beyond this learning journal itself. Excuse me. And so, yeah, I guess what I'm saying is that sometimes it's okay to just do that shorter bit to get their attention, to continue, to keep it continuing without it becoming a stress, which I know it sometimes can be. And again, this is just from my experience, but yeah, that when we have our timetabled mindfulness sessions booked in each day, some days it's like, there's no way this is going to work without it becoming absolutely hectic and the children not enjoying it, and I don't want them to experience that mindfulness, those mindfulness activities and reflections if they're in a space from the start to be resenting that. I want them to know that this is something that they're really going to enjoy and love, and they leave feeling great, which most of the time they do. But for me, the learning journal, it's an easy go-to sometimes, which is okay to do.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I think is really important that you just said that I want to kind of highlight is that it's really about setting your learners up for success. It's not forcing, oh, well, we said we were going to do this at 9:30 and now it's 9:30. And, you know, that may not actually be the time, because we need to be responsive and receptive to the moment, which is what mindfulness is, right?
That's right.
You know, being sensitive to the needs of our learners. But I love how you're using the learning journal as that kind of extra pit stop for learning and a check-in to reflect, not just as busy work, right? But as something to deepen their understanding.
Absolutely. And I think too, just briefly touching on that one a little bit more, is when I'm feeling frazzled and stressed, I also don't want to be leading a workshop too. And so I find that learning journal activity can just be that lovely, peaceful experience for us to lock in, do something, at least something, outside of all the amazingness within the workshops themselves.
And do you model, I mean, I'm sure you do, but do you model when you're feeling frazzled, you know, saying to your class, oh, you know, oh, wow, I've flipped my lid, or I'm flared up, and then modeling that, you know, learning along with them?
I certainly do. And that's something else that I was going to say within the workshops. Another thing that I've found that has been a godsend, it's something that I wouldn't live without, is throughout the workshops, particularly when in the first year that I did it, all these emotions and feelings were coming up that children were expressing. And there was an opportunity for them to reflect, but I wanted it to be something visible and something that we were working on in between those workshops too, and throughout the week. And so what I did was I printed out all the emotions that the children expressed. And what we did is we put them all in order, and we talked about a fuller cup emotion and an emptier cup, not talking about positive and negative emotions. We don't say that anything's negative, it's just something that you're feeling. And so that then gets displayed on the wall as a ladder, and all the children's names are next to it, including mine. And so it becomes this visual in class that children can check in with, and they'll come in the mornings and move their name to how they're feeling, especially after playtime is a big one. And also what I introduced last year, we had two sides. I want to talk about it and I don't want to talk about it. So if one of the children, we had violence on there at the bottom, and I thought that was really important to have too, because it just takes away that stigma of it being this negative. You might be feeling violent, but there's also positive ways to deal with that. And so healthy ways to deal with that. And so they might have their name on, I want to talk about it. And so I know that they need to be checked in with, or I don't want to talk about it, but they've made it clear to us that that's how they're feeling. And so that develops a strong sense of compassion within the class, because we can see whose cups are emptier and need to be filled. And that we're all feeling different things at different points in time, and just being responsible as a whole group for our emotions, and really just becoming so aware of everything in between mad, bad, glad, and sad. And so when you ask, do I model it too? Absolutely. In fact, when I'm feeling tired or stressed or overwhelmed, I think it's one of the best opportunities to teach mindfulness, because it allows the children to see someone who they might think, well, you're the teacher and you're teaching us. But for me, I see it as an opportunity to all learn together. And that was something else I really wanted to mention on this kōrero, the journey that I've actually had since teaching mindfulness with the children, and the opportunity that it's really had when we're sitting in our circle and we're reflecting on emotions, and I make sure that I'm involved in that kōrero too. And it's actually, lots of stuff have come up for me, and I've thought, actually, I don't react in the most positive way or the healthiest way when that happens. And so it's really shifted my deepening of sense of self and emotional intelligence also, which then just becomes this cycle of me totally valuing and loving teaching pause, breathe, smile to children, because I see the change in myself and they're loving it because I'm loving it. As we all know, as teachers, you know, you've got to walk the talk. Children can sense nonsense from a mile away, and they know when you genuinely mean something, or you're just saying it because we should, which I know I've done, you know, but yeah, I feel it and I love it. And I think that's why it does work so well also.
Right. So personal buy-in and your own approach to mindfulness, finding ways to connect with it yourself, really informs how you lead it in the classroom. It's not just content, right? Yeah. It's actually embodying it and living it. And it sounds like you've, you know, found your own growth edge sometimes with that. Yeah,
absolutely. Which a lot of our kaiako have at Kaiti, and that's why it's been here for 4 years. And we still talk about, you know, pause, breathe, smile, and it's part of our daily program. Like, mindfulness is strongly valued here, and we saw it during lockdown as well. All the programs that were being shared and developed through our class groups, everything had some form of mindfulness involved. And what was really interesting too, what our family wanted to share and would always do every day out of all the activities and learning that we provided, they definitely did the mindfulness, whether it be the yoga practice or the breathing or using senses out in nature, and all of that it's highly valued, and the children love it too. And so yeah, it's just a great thing.
So to kind of bring it down from maybe there's a teacher on this call who's watching going, well, Sarah, that's great for you. You're 4 years into this. I'm brand new. And maybe they've done a couple lessons and they're like, I'm still kind of trying to find my footing.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for brand new teachers who are just themselves familiarizing, you know, with the program? Like, can you put yourself back in that mindset and think, what advice would you have wanted to receive?
Absolutely. And so not just for someone starting new, but also for people that might have younger kids that find, you know, going through the workshop, you know, dot point by dot point, quite intense for the littlies too. A big thing that I recommend, and I still do it, is going through each workshop and seeing what's going to work for you and your children, and I create a slideshow And so at the beginning, I'll have the points at the start for the children to see too what our focus is. I'm just opening the book now so I can use some of the kōrero. So for example, lesson 1, coming home. So I'll be coming home, and then I'll go to the coming home lesson plan and see what's in there and read through what is expected. And I'll say, yep, my children can access that. No, that's going to be too much for my kids. And I will put in what we're going to go through for that lesson. And so I have my laptop with me rather than sort of going, what do I need to do next? Oh, yep, I need to say that now. Oh, wait, are they still focused at the moment? And so just having that slideshow is really helpful. And with the littlies too, there's the body scan meditation that's available on the Pause, Breathe, Smile website. And it's a really long meditation, and over time that stamina can be created to be in that space. But you might know a different body scan that's available that you could link to and have that in there that's a little bit shorter, or you might just want to go through it yourself. So it is about being organized and knowing what that lesson has included in it, and just being organized to have it ready to suit you and your children, whether it's a 10-minute session or you go for the 45 minutes. I find that creating a slideshow to go with it's really helpful, with the links to go into to open up that meditation good to go, and to open up that YouTube clip ready to go. The other thing that I found really helpful, because it is a stamina situation with being able to be present and still and in the moment. And I speak for myself, because when I first began, I valued meditation and I knew it was really important and a great thing to do, but I never practiced it. And the thought of being still and just breathing, for 5 minutes even, I couldn't, like, my mind would wander and go all over the place. And so again, a really lovely opportunity to learn and grow with the kids and be able to teach to that, because I'm reflecting on my experience. But within that slideshow, maybe finding different alternatives to suit your children and your age level. Eye masks was another thing that I got in. I got in a set of class eye masks, and you can get a disinfectant spray that you can use at the end of the sessions too. And what I found was that really allowed for kids, and again, for myself, I like wearing an eye mask. I'm much less prone to wanting to look what's over there. I've heard someone come in the door who was that. It allowed them to really just tune into their senses that way. And I know that ideally you do get to this space where you are being present here and now, and you're able to allow your mind to wander and let those thoughts come and go. But if in the beginning you want them to have that buy-in and really love, mindfulness practice and meditation, sometimes it is good to have these tips and tricks to, make them work less harder and be able to fall into that space a bit more. The other thing, I brought this with me. This is a Hoberman's sphere. And so I use it for my seniors, but it's great for juniors too. So with breathing practice, so you can just, if you're doing a count breathing, so breathing in, and this is them imagining their puku, so their soft belly, breathing out. And so they've got that visual to follow. The other thing that I find really helpful too, this is a tone bar. And I've had this since the beginning, and I use it during our mindfulness sessions, but I actually use it throughout the class every day too. And so just bringing their attention back in. So you ding the bar, and everyone has to raise their hand when they no longer hear the sound. So it encourages them to really listen right to the end. And it's also a really cool opportunity to bring back in, how are you feeling? Are you present right now? Why do you feel you're present? Because all I heard was the tone bar. Even though there's kids running around outside, they have, I'll ding it so you can hear it. So, and in class, And so you're bringing these mindfulness practices into class too. So the class might be chatting and discussing whatever it is they're discussing, and they hear this and they might finish their conversation, but then drift into when they no longer hear the sound. That's another thing that I've found really helpful.
So a reason that I love that, that particular thing that you've incorporated, and it's really embedded in the class. It's embedded in your classroom ethos. It's not, okay, now we're going to practice mindfulness. It's a recalling us to that awareness that they're cultivating. And I just think that's a really beautiful, and it doesn't take long, right? Like that's a few seconds.
Absolutely. And so what will happen throughout the year is I'll ask one of my kids, can you ding the tone bar, please? And they'll ding it, and then they'll pick up the Hoberman sphere whilst it's ringing. And so the kids that are tuning in are then starting to tune into the breathing as well, and becoming really present to their breathing and the sound of the tone bar. And like you said, it just then becomes this normality of refocusing or calming down. And it's just a lovely practice to have.
So have you found children sometimes struggle to settle into the practices, or maybe they're distracting others during a mindfulness practice? What suggestions could you offer to teachers to kind of mitigate that and help bring that child on board?
Yes, so this is so it happens, and I know it's definitely to do with the level of distraction, and sometimes some children, they just need a break from that. And if I am gauging that the rest of the class genuinely will want to continue and move through it, it is a matter of them having a break. But to be honest, I've never had a child choose to walk out of the classroom and never return to a mindfulness session. And I will allow them to sit on the periphery, because they are still listening and they are still taking in, and sometimes that's okay. You all know your children better than anyone else, and so it is really about knowing the children too. I would never growl a child for it as well, for choosing to not be involved. And if they're choosing to disrupt others, that's why creating the class treaty at the beginning of the lessons is really important. And so we talk about staying in our space bubble, listening with kindness and curiosity. And so at the beginning of each lesson, we do revisit those. And because the children have come up with them, they really value them, and everyone knows that they're important. So I do find that's really helpful in stopping that disruptive behavior. We also sit in a circle when we practice mindfulness, so everyone's facing each other. And with year 5, 6s, I talk to them about, I know you really want to get the most out of this, so I'm really intrigued to see where you're going to choose to sit, so that you can allow yourself and your mates to really get the most out of this experience, so they feel as though they've had a choice in making those responsible decisions. The other thing is will talk to the child, and I will say, how are you feeling right now? And they might say, I'm feeling bored. And I allow them to feel that. And I say that's okay that you're feeling that emotion. I wonder why that's something that's come up for you. I don't know, because this is boring. It's like, okay, well, do you want some time out from this? Because everyone else is sitting here and just taking away that stigma of growling and this is something bad and what you're doing is bad right now. It almost takes that power away from them behaving in that way. And if that does happen in a lesson, I will then go away and think about how the next lesson needs to be structured. And last year, I actually did have a class who were a lot more energetic and active.
I love that framing.
So,
I love how you framed that up. That was really mindful.
Yeah. And so our workshops last year were where there was a lot less talk and thinking and a lot less pause time. And I had to think of creative ways to bring mindfulness in outside of the structured pause, breathe, smile, lessons 1 to 8 framework, because I knew it wasn't going to work for this class. And so that's when the learning journal was a given every day. That was part of our mindfulness. Mindfulness eating was done, mindful movement, but we'd break it up throughout the day. So mindful movement would be after lunchtime, after playtime, to bring them back in again because they're overly active. Mindful meditation time, masks were on, or they could turn their hoodies around, put the hoodie over their face, and they felt cool about that. And as long as they weren't touching anyone, they could have their eyes open, whatever. But yeah, it is a stamina thing too, and they did start to get it and appreciate it. And yeah, it's really about knowing the children. And then too, just thinking like, when do I feel distracted? I'm hungry, I'm usually tired, I sometimes feel agitated. If I'm in a hui and someone wants me to keep going and I've just lost it and I just can't be bothered anymore, do I want them to make me push through it? And no, I don't. None of us do.
Right.
We need a break, and you know, maybe it's time to revisit it the next day and try it in a different way. And yeah, it's about being flexible, but at the same time, we all know much more than what we think we know, and the handbook's great. And if you've read through the lesson and you have an idea, if it's all going to caca, you can just, you know, you can either stop it, and that's fine, because yeah, you don't want it to be an experience that creates resentment like we spoke about before. But yeah, you can just go for it yourself too, and
then come back to it, you know, like you said, sometimes it's the situation or the day, or, you know, maybe as you were saying, dropping in the mindful movement, which, you know, you find movements that the kids bring their bodies and minds back on, you know, back in balance if they're kind of distracted or scattered. And there's so many kind of resources and tools that that you can drop in outside of the formal lessons.
Exactly. You know? Yeah, that's exactly right. And like with everything that we do, whether we've got a new maths program that's come in that we're expected to teach with our children, or we're beginning a new writing genre that we're not comfortable with teaching, is similar with the Pause, Breathe, Smile program. And I felt it too. You do have to just take that first step, and it might be really disorganized and all over the show, and you've constantly had to look at your workbook and, oh shivers, I forgot to do the blah blah, or get the fruit ready for mindful eating. But you do get a really strong sense of how they work after, you know, just pushing forward and with it once. And the more you do it too, the more you just start to get to know the lingo and but if in doubt, like I said, the learning journal, it's all there too. So if that's how you want to start the lesson, you know, go, and it will show you what has been taught throughout it. Use that. It's all a benefit.
I think you put that really well. You know, just to be patient with ourselves anytime we're doing something new, right? That mindfulness is not something we do in 8 weeks and then say, that's it, I've done mindfulness, now I'm mindful. And that each time you teach it, I imagine from what you've said, it, you know, your experience deepens, you're more able to respond to the sensitivities and the needs of the class. But that first time through really is about, it's just as much about experiencing it yourself, because often this is new for many of us.
Absolutely. And yeah, like, I'm going to be honest, I was really fortunate. The first class that I had to take on Pause, Breathe, Smile had amazing whānau involvement, and a lot of them, you know, some of them were practicing mindfulness in a way at home, so there was that prior knowledge too. And so I was a bit blessed in the sense that I was able, these children were very forgiving and patient, and so I felt a lot more comfortable taking those risks, knowing that someone's not going to pick up a chair and throw it across the room, and it's not always like that. And so that's why, yeah, being organized and knowing the lesson and knowing your kids and how is it going to look for you helps. And even break up that lesson throughout the week. You know, do a little bit each day and keep it really short. And yeah, there is a sense of stamina and capacity that comes with practicing mindfulness. We're not naturally like that from the beginning.
Yeah. Well, we have time for one last question before we need to start wrapping up. And this is, I'm particularly interested, you said something about your boys and emotional intelligence and kind of removing the stigma around certain emotions. Can you just maybe tell us either a story or a little bit more about that as our last kind of point that we can make? Yeah,
absolutely. So there are a lot of similar stories like this one that have come from practicing mindfulness. And doing the Pause, Breathe, Smile workshops at school. And so the most significant one is the first one that I experienced with one of my Māori boys in class. And he was in my first class, and he had very limited kōrero and ability or capacity to contribute to our workshops. He found them real dumb. And he would kind of sit on the outskirts of the porowhita and all of that sort of thing. And so that in itself made me think, okay, we need to put up some class displays in class. Maybe if there's a ladder of feelings and emotions on the wall and his name's on there, he's at least a part of it there. And he was whakama to feel anything other than happy or angry. And if you don't feel sad, you don't feel embarrassed or anything like that, you're either happy or you're angry. That's it. And so to begin with, when we did our reflections and our circle time, and he would start to pipe in a little bit, and he would say things like, oh, well, that would make me feel angry, and I'd want to hit them or something like that. And so and that's another thing in our workshops. I never say that's amazing or that's such a good answer. I always say thank you for your answer, so that children don't start linking, what does Koka want to hear in class? What's the right thing to say? Thank you for your answer. And so to begin with, it was a really good opportunity for me to be going away and reflecting, like, how can I have this boy involved in these sessions, because I know it's of benefit to him, but I don't want to force him to, but it's our kaupapa in class. And just by having these class displays and slowly just bringing it into our class environment and talking about it a little bit more, especially the emotions ladder, that was a big one. And just being consistent with it and me really valuing it, he could see it wasn't going anywhere. And so he slowly started to sort of get closer to the porowhita, and his peers were being involved in it too. They loved the emotions ladder, and so he could see this is what we do in our class, and there's no shame around it. The eye masks were massive for him. He loved it because, he didn't have to, he was always worried if people saw him not being a warrior and that sort of thing. And so if he had his eye mask on, he couldn't see that people, not that anyone was looking at him, but it was out of sight, out of mind for him. And so just continuing to have those opportunities for him to feel safe, the home learning, taking photos of the kids during mindfulness practice, sharing them to our group. His whānau would see that they were starting to talk about it at home, even though he was like, nah, that stink, that's, shame, whatever. But he could see that it's starting to, feed out and that sort of thing. And so he slowly came out of his shell, and he started to really recognize how good he felt, sharing his emotions and feelings. And it just started going out into the playground and like here we talk about the law of bucket filling too, in that sense of like you feel someone else's, you feel your own, and he was really seeing that happen for himself, and constantly me talking to it too when he was making those healthier choices and choosing to sort of let his walls down and be a bit more vulnerable with his feelings and emotions, and sort of tapping in right there. How does that make you feel? How are you feeling right now? And he was like, actually, yeah, I do feel content, or yeah, I do feel grateful. And so that was all positive, and it also just added to him developing a stronger sense of self. And he then, you know, became an advocate for Pause, Breathe, Smile out in the playground, encouraging people to be kind, because he was known as the cool, tough guy. And so he had that power to do that, and he was starting to use it for positivity. And then the opportunities that started coming up for him because of these healthier choices he was making. Next year, he was a student leader, kapahaka team, rugby team, all of that, because yeah, it was just really positive and really lovely. And he was also a real blessing for me, because I had to really reflect and learn about what would work. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That was such an encouragement and such an inspiration to think, oh, you know, maybe one of the learners who's hesitant or resistant at first, but the power of positive peer pressure and consistency, and you being responsive and sensitive to them, that you know, that maybe by the end that learner really can, you know, come online and come on board. That often the ones who are the most resistant are the ones who can benefit the most. So
yeah,
thank you so much, Sara. You've been just such a joy to listen to, and just hopefully, you know, we promised we would keep this concise and also inspiring. So thank you so much for your sharing your wisdom and your experiences. It's been just really wonderful to get to speak with you. So
thank you for having me, and thank you everyone.
And again, just a huge thank you to Southern Cross for their support for this program and our mission to reach all primary and intermediate schools throughout New Zealand with mindfulness to support mind health. And I do want to just put in a quick mention that we'd love for you to join the closed Facebook group for educators. There's going to be a link to join in the chat box. We will not spam you. It's just a place where you can come together and have conversation with each other about how things are going at your school, questions that you might have. But obviously, there were many things that, that Sara shared that hopefully you can take and implement and use in your own classroom. And also, you're warmly invited to attend next month's Whakawhiti Kōrero, which we'll be hearing from Rebecca Locke from the Hora Whenua Kahuiako. And that session is going to be on Thursday, the 24th of March, same time, 3:30 to 4:15, and we hope you'll join us. So thank you all so much for being here today. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you next time. And thank you again, Sara.
Thank you.